So I've been a fan of the Nintendo Switch since day one. I mean, as soon as it was announced, a hybrid console that you can play on your TV and then take on the go, that was just a game changer for me. Especially considering the fact that we no longer had to compromise as handheld gamers. We got the full game that the console players got in handheld mode, and we can take it anywhere. I think it's safe to say by 2022, Nintendo had completely dominated the handheld market. I mean, it took out most of its competitors back in the 90s, and you could probably say that the PSP took itself out with the lack of development. But it was exactly at this time where a new handheld came into the market. And no, it wasn't from Nintendo. It didn't play by any console rules, and PC gamers were hyping it up like it was the next coming. The Valve Steam Deck. Now, like many Switch loyalists out there, I saw the Steam Deck and thought to myself, what do I need a Steam Deck for if I already have a Nintendo Switch? Fast forward, it's 2026, the Nintendo Switch 2 has been around for over 6 months, and if you watched my video on that, you know that I'm a little disappointed in what Nintendo has done with its latest offering. So I decided to cave and switch over to the dark side. I picked this up, a Steam Deck OLED, to really figure it out. Is this really worth it? Or is this all just PC gamer hype? Let's find out. We're gonna break this down. We're gonna talk about the things that us Switch fanboys care about the most and see if the Steam Deck can actually hang. Now, obviously, we have to talk about first impressions grabbing this device because this isn't a device that's widely available for you to just go check out in a store. This is exclusively sold from Valve through Steam, so if you want to pick one up, you have to either order one from them or get one secondhand on Marketplace or eBay. But when you initially grab this device, the first thing that stands out to you is that it's huge. This is not really a device that you can just kind of hide. This is a huge device, and it mainly has to do with the fact that you have tons of controls on the front and this 7.4-inch display as well. Now, let's address the display first and foremost, because this is where it really shows that the Steam Deck is a little old at this point. This is rocking a 16:10 800p display that's capable of up to 90 Hertz. Now, it is OLED, so the colors and the saturation look fantastic, but by all standards, this display tech is a little outdated, especially considering the fact that Nintendo Switch 2 does come with a 1080p 120 Hz display. This is a little shy of 2026 standards. Now, that's just talking about things on paper. Once you play with this device, this display looks great. The color saturation is off the charts. It also is HDR certified, so playing games on this device actually look really good. Now, moving into the controls is where things get a little weird, especially if you're coming from something like the Nintendo Switch. This isn't following any traditional control layout by any standard, especially considering that the face buttons and the D-pads are kind of in line with the analog sticks, which when you first grab it, to me felt a little weird because I had to move my fingers from a more natural position to moving them inward to get to the analog sticks. But just like anything else, when you do it for the first time, yeah, it's gonna feel weird, but once you get a couple hours of gaming in, you really don't notice it anymore. The second thing is the trackpads. Now, these trackpads were something that I kind of struggled with at first. I wasn't sure what to use them for outside of just a mouse and a scroll wheel. But one of the biggest and the best use cases that I found for it so far was typing. Yes, while you have a touchscreen and you can just type on the touchscreen, it's kind of awkward to be holding the device in handheld mode and then have to squeeze your fingers in on the display to type comfortably. And that's where I found that the trackpads kind of act as extensions for your thumbs, and you can actually use the trackpad to type, and it works out surprisingly well. I actually like it. Flipping it around to the back, you're gonna find that the Steam Deck has 4 customizable buttons. Now, these buttons, you can map them to any game to do any function that you would want to, so you get plenty of customizability there. And we also have the traditional bumper and trigger setup on the top. So with the controls out of the way, now let's just really dive into the comfort of playing long-term on this device. Now, you would think that because it has all this nice curvature to it, it has this nice curve on the front that molds to the shape of your palm when you grip it. It has these ergonomic humps on the back, so it has a good bit of grip when you pick it up. But one of the things that I found is that because this device is so big and a little heavy, I get kind of uncomfortable playing this thing for long sessions. And it kind of makes sense as to why they make some of these weird and wacky accessories, like that big pillow with the stand that you can clip your Steam Deck into, because this device does get a little uncomfortable to play for long sessions. Now, with that being said, if you've played any big handheld for long periods of time, you will know that you probably will experience some fatigue after playing for some time. Now, one of the biggest things I like about the Switch is the convenience factor. You can just pick that device up, load up a game, and play. There's nothing to it. With the Steam Deck, things are a little different. Small things like the sleep to wake function. Sometimes I power off my device or I put it in sleep mode, and then when I wake it back up, it takes an eternity to get it to turn back on. Like, I just put it to sleep, just press the button, and it's taking forever. There we go. And it's stuff like that that lets you know that Nintendo has a really dialed in product when it comes to small convenience features like that. Now, one of the things that I was reading online is that the tinkering process to get games running properly on the Steam Deck was going to be a little, I don't want to say intensive, but it was going to take some effort. And to be honest with you guys, as a Switch user, I didn't tinker with going into this device. I simply turned it on, downloaded my games, and started playing. I've been playing Assassin's Creed Odyssey for about 8 hours on the Steam Deck, and I didn't make any settings changes at all to get that game running properly. Now, it is running at 30 frames a second, but we'll talk about that in a little bit. Now, let's talk about the battery life on this device. This is where I've seen the biggest swing as far as battery life performance is concerned, because I've had this thing last me as long as 4 hours of playing some really light games like Absalom, down to even 2 hours or even a little bit less playing something like Need for Speed Heat, which honestly made me a little confused because I got under 2 hours of gameplay when I was playing Need for Speed Heat. But when I was playing Assassin's Creed Odyssey, I was actually able to get a lot more than 2 hours of gameplay there. So there's a huge swing as far as battery life is concerned, but honestly, it hasn't been that bad, especially considering the games that I'm able to play on this device. Now, going into the game library, this is where things get very interesting. Because you have access to the Steam store, you can basically buy whatever you want. Now, whether or not it's going to work on the Steam Deck is going to be the question. Now, once you load up the store on the Steam Deck, you're going to be met with a couple different options. You can see games that work great on Steam. There's actually going to be a Steam verified marker on these games. Those markers will tell you if the game is perfect for the Steam Deck, has issues, or is just downright not playable on the Steam Deck. But even with the Steam Deck verified marker, there are plenty of people finding tons of games that say that they don't work on the Steam Deck, getting them to work on the Steam Deck by making a few settings changes. And this is probably where that tinkering factor came in that I was reading about earlier, where people were saying that they had to tinker with some of their games. They're probably talking about games that aren't Steam verified, but you have tons of options when it comes to games to play. So I guess when it comes to exclusive titles, this is really where the Steam Deck doesn't really have anything to offer in terms of exclusives. It's a PC handheld, so most of the games are going to be available on the Steam Deck. You're going to be able to run on your PC. Now, there are some Valve exclusive games because Valve does come up with their own games, but we've even seen some of those games like Portal be ported over to the Nintendo Switch. So as far as exclusive titles are concerned, you're not really going to find anything there. But as far as how those games run and perform on the Steam Deck, I gotta say that I am impressed. So far, I've spent maybe about 30 hours playing couple different games on this device, anything from smaller indie games like Absalom to bigger titles like Assassin's Creed, Need for Speed, and Resident Evil. And this thing has been taking it like a champ. One of the weird things that I noticed playing Assassin's Creed, I didn't make any settings changes, and by default it was running at 30 frames a second. I'm saying that because I do have the FPS counter at the top left hand corner of the device. But to be completely honest with you guys, I've been getting so immersed playing some of these games that I don't even see the FPS counter on the screen when I'm playing. Even though it was playing roughly between 30 and 40, maybe 50 frames a second, it really didn't impact my gameplay at all, which is extremely surprising to me, guys, because I thought that having something that was 1080p and at least 60 frames was the bare minimum for gaming, especially in 2026. But I guess this really draws one important question, is how much do those things matter when you're just having a good time playing on the device? And I really think that speaks to the performance factor here, right? Is that while slightly outdated by today's standards, the Steam Deck is still providing you an incredible experience at this price point. The games just run smoothly, and that's really one of the important parts about having a handheld that can run that big of a game on the Steam Deck. Don't get me wrong, I'm not saying that Assassin's Creed and Need for Speed are the biggest games you can play, but it's pretty impressive to play those games on this device, considering the fact that those games haven't been released on the Nintendo Switch. Which leads me into my next biggest point, and that's cost. Because what I just said there about some of these games not being released on the Nintendo Switch is true about some of them, but a lot of them have been ported over, especially to the Nintendo Switch 2. Games like Cyberpunk 2077 and Assassin's Creed Shadows have all made their way to the Nintendo Switch 2. However, I'm gonna plug in my video right here so you guys can see, so you guys can go ahead and watch that after this one. My biggest problem with Nintendo right now is cost. The cost of buying games on Nintendo is outrageous, and I don't understand why. Let's just take Assassin's Creed Shadows for instance. That game is MSRP right now on the eShop for $60. I can get that game for the Steam Deck for $30. How is this even possible? What is involved in the markup of getting a game ported over to the Switch 2 where they have to increase the price so much? I mean, especially considering the fact that we're just at the tail end of the winter sale for Steam. I don't know how much money I've spent on video games for the Steam Deck, at least $100, and I got like 10 games out of it. So I recently bought like the last 3 Tomb Raider games for like $7 or $8 on Steam. And to even get one of the games on Nintendo Switch is $20. And this is honestly where the Steam Deck really shines. So where do I stand with the Steam Deck? And I'm sure you guys can probably tell by the tone of this video, I'm loving it. I understand the hype now. I've been missing out on this thing for so long. I kind of wish I would have gotten into it a lot sooner, because I would have played a lot of games that I missed out on that didn't get ported over into the Switch. Yes, you're missing out on the 1080p, 120 hertz, blah, blah, blah. But to be honest with you guys, like I mentioned earlier, the gaming experience has been so good so far that I haven't even noticed that I've been playing games at 30 frames a second or at 800p. And the biggest kicker for me is that the bar to entry to getting a Steam Deck is a lot lower than getting a Switch. I mean, think about it. Yes, you're gonna get a Nintendo Switch for $450, but by the time you buy a few games, you're gonna have already surpassed the price of the Steam Deck. Real quick note here, guys, as I'm editing this video, I'm realizing that I'm missing one important thing about the Nintendo Switch, and that's the fact that you get to actually own physical copies of your games. Now, I know that there's some controversy around game key cards, but unlike the Steam Deck, you can actually buy games physically and own them for the Nintendo Switch. With the Steam Deck, it is coming in at a higher price. Once you start buying some games, it actually becomes cheaper long term. Now, we have to address something big here, because the Steam Deck is 4 years old at this point, and we have to question how much our developers are going to want to make games that are compatible with the Steam Deck. I don't think Valve is planning on releasing a Steam Deck 2 at least within the next year, so we're safe from that perspective. But as far as developers wanting to make their games compatible with the Steam Deck, that's something that needs to be questioned. Wishful thinking would say that developers would want to make their games compatible with it because it opens them up to have more availability across the board. And one might even argue, since the Nintendo Switch 2 is around, that making their games compatible with the Nintendo Switch 2 would make it so that it will run on the Steam Deck. But that's something that we can't say for sure. I would caution you as far as future-proofing yourself is concerned with the Steam Deck. I mean, it is plenty powerful, but we just don't know how much developers are going to want to make games compatible with this device. Now, let me know what you guys think down in the comments below. I've had a great time playing on the Steam Deck, and honestly, I wish I would have gotten into it earlier, but let me know what you guys think. But if you enjoyed the video, please like the video and consider subscribing to the channel for more handheld-based content. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you guys in the next one. Peace.